Welcome to Ask the Therapist, a monthly podcast for everyone who's interested in how our minds work, building resilience through journaling, and all things therapy. I'm your host, Sarah Rees, a mental health nurse and CBT therapist with over 20 years of experience in the field of mental health. Hello and welcome to episode 46 of Ask the Therapist. It's lovely to have you here. Today I'm doing something slightly different on the podcast. I'm handing over my microphone to Martina Witter and she is going to be interviewing me. She asked me a few weeks ago if I would come on her podcast, Rivers to Resilience. So if you are interested in anything to do with resilience, which I know we all are, head over there and I'll pop a link in the show notes. Martina is an expert resilience trainer. She does a lot of work in the corporate industry. She does a little bit of TV work, so she's coming to screen near you soon. She'll be on your TV. And she's a brilliant therapist. We trained together a number of years ago. And since we trained together, we've done similar things in our business and become really good friends. So business besties, I would say. We talk in this episode about all things journaling, resilience, self-awareness. I share some things that I've not shared before as well, which is a bit different for me. But I hope you enjoy the episode. I know I really loved being interviewed by Martina. She's very easy to get on with and chat to. Let me know what you think.
So how would you describe your, resilience? What role has that had in your, what whole role has that had for you as a CBT therapist? And what role has it just had in your life in general?
Such an interesting question. I love all the questions that you put together. I've really enjoyed looking at them over this last week. I think resilience I don't think it's something you ever consider as a child and
Yeah.
growing up. I know I didn't really consider it until a lot later on. I think when you get hit yourself. I know, I suppose in my life, I think we've got something in common that I don't think we've ever talked about, but I also lost a parent.
Oh, right.
When
I
I
didn't
was
realise that.
14. So
Mhm.
I think life had just been child,
Yeah.
carefree. And then at 14, my dad was unfortunately killed in a car accident. And
Right.
that I think losing a parent is just absolutely pivotal, life changing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it
And
is.
things really changed for me there. And from that moment, I think I got a huge drive and independence and motivation. And, it's given me immense resilience going through that. I mean, it's the hardest thing that I ever went through, but also,
Yeah.
has also given me an awful lot. And
Mhm.
so out of difficulty comes resilience. And
Yeah.
while that was brilliant, I think the last 10 years in my life, I've looked at softening some of that drive, some of that
Mhm.
motivation, and getting balance as well.
Yes.
And that's been a different type of rewarding thing.
Mhm.
So that's,
Yeah.
but I think resilience for me is about being able to roll with life's punches, to be
Yes.
able to kind of go with what life throws at
Mhm.
you and to bounce back as
Mhm.
quickly as
Yes.
possible.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I guess globally, we've all been facing lots of
Oh my gosh.
punches, lots of challenges with the pandemic, with the war in Ukraine. Just
Yeah.
it just feels like it's non-stop.
And
It
it is non-stop. I think life
yeah.
is not like Instagram, is it? It is
Oh no.
really, really tough. Everybody has a story. And I always
Yeah.
think that as therapists, that's the one thing that we learn that not everybody gets to learn is that
Mhm.
everybody has a story. Everybody that
Yes.
walks into my clinic room, I just think, you're so amazing. I'm
Mhm.
obviously fascinated by
Yes.
people that, really intrigued, but and they sit down and they have this incredible story.
Mhm.
And I know that everybody walks around with a struggle and their story and
Yeah.
life has happened to them. And I
Mhm.
think lots of people feel like it's only me that's gone through this
Mhm.
stuff and it's only
Mhm.
me that's had this experience. And actually, life is really tough and we've all
Mhm.
struggled. And,
It
you
is.
know, yeah,
And you can't judge a book by its cover.
no,
Like I said, everyone has a story, everyone has a history, and
yeah,
when we meet people, we meet them at certain chapters in their life,
yeah,
and they may have already gone through an immense struggle or trauma,
yeah,
or if you're not going through it now, we guarantee you that at some point, unfortunately, in the future, you will, because challenges, adversity is something that we're guaranteed to face. We'll
Yes.
all lose
Yes.
someone in our lives, and nothing can prepare for you for that.
No, no,
Nothing
no,
can. But
no,
it's,
no.
I guess it's important to try and build those resilience muscles. So trying to learn, excuse me, new skills
Yeah.
that can help with building resilience, kind of just our personal resilience
Yeah, and I think
in
it's
general.
important to some people try and kind of get rid of any adversity in their life and try and keep
Hmm.
themselves safe as possible, and there's
Yes,
risks in that, and the
yes.
more controlled we try and be, the more problematic that can be.
Hmm.
So it's about kind of there will be adversity, leaning into that fact and what can you
Yes.
do to build a great foundation to,
Hmm.
uh, to roll with the punches that
Yes.
life is gonna throw at us.
Yes. So how would you, from your perspective as a therapist, how would you encourage people to kind of lean into the challenge, into the adversity, or to trying to kind of find advantage in adversity, and maybe just kind of drawing upon your own life experiences? Because I guess experiencing the loss of your excuse me, your dad at 14 is a major trauma. And it makes me think of, I was in my early 20s when my mum passed away,
Mm.
and my younger brother, he was around 14. And I acknowledged that the impact that it had on him was far greater because of where he was in his kind of developmental age. So
Yeah.
he never wanted to go to the grave. We would all go, but um, he kind of resisted, which I can understand, and he was more avoidant. So I'm just kind of wondering if you're okay, maybe to elaborate a little on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think 14 is a horrible age, isn't it? It really is. But I had a
Yeah,
younger brother, and my younger brother was 10.
right.
And it's interesting you say that because I don't think there is a good age. I lost my father-in-law about 6, 7 years ago now,
Hmm.
and I need him,
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
my brother was 10, and I've always had that thought about him that was harder because 'cause I'd had my dad for a
Yes.
number more years,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm not sure there is an easy time.
Hmm. Yeah. So how did you lean in? Maybe if with that experience, or with other
I
experiences
suppose
in
with
in
that
adversity.
experience, I wasn't being self-aware at all. I think
Hmm.
um, I kind of sometimes I think maybe life has changed now, but I've recently worked with somebody who had lost a parent at that age, not
Mm.
so long ago, and everybody around us just ignored it. So I went to school after 2 weeks, nobody had mentioned it
Right.
because they didn't know how to approach it. They didn't know how to talk to me about
Mm.
it. I was in absolute shock, and I think, my
Right.
mum was around, but I think when you lose one parent for, you lose another as well because
Hmm.
they're in the midst of grief, which you don't
Hmm.
understand.
Hmm.
And I got through that time by, I suppose being thinking about my future really, I suppose,
Hmm.
and building up, being really independent and very motivated and very driven to kind of
Hmm.
leave home and do my own thing.
Right. Okay. At such a young age, that's
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's so. I
Whether
guess
that was
it's.
right or wrong, I mean, if I could
Hmm.
look back now and think about it, I would have, made sure I was a lot more supported by people around me,
Hmm.
talked as much as I could.
Yes.
But people don't know how to talk about grief, do they?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
loss, so they tend
Yeah.
and you get that kind of, "This is awkward," quite quickly, and you learn very
Yeah.
quickly to shut it down.
Hmm. Hmm.
But, talk, get support. But hindsight's brilliant, isn't it? It's
Hmm.
2020. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. So
yeah.
it sounds like with that experience, you were already you already had that right that kind of growth mindset, that optimistic mindset,
Yeah.
focused on the future, and you were already looking to try and successfully navigate through that. And
Yeah.
that's kind of ties in with the rivers to resilience. And one of the rivers is looking at a growth mindset, and how someone might perceive setbacks or
Mm,
failures, and kind of acknowledging that this isn't the end. Because for another 14-year-old, their
yeah.
response could have been the opposite.
Yeah,
Their
I suppose
world could have come crumbling down.
Yeah, my dad was quite driven, he was quite forward thinking, he was a real
Right.
doer, and I
Mhm.
suppose, that sometimes when somebody dies, the only thing you can do for them is live more, live harder and live more, and for their legacy to be a
Yes.
bigger, better life.
Yes.
I would hate for me to die or anybody to die and then somebody else's life to be absolutely ruined and they live life
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
grieving.
Mhm.
It's I think the biggest thing we can do for people is live big.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Totally concur. As you were just as you were speaking, I just felt like I was listening to myself, Sarah, because
Mm.
that is what drives me in a lot of what I do. My mum was very driven, and I feel that because she
Oh,
passed
was
away very
she?
young. Yeah, she was just a few years older than me.
Oh
So
my God,
she was
yeah.
very, I think she was 46. So
So young.
it was,
Mhm.
I mean, it didn't feel for me, it didn't feel young at the time, but like I'm 42, I'm like, I'm young, I've got lots of energy and lots of life to live. But in a lot of what I do, I feel like I'm living her unfulfilled dreams
Yes.
because my mum
Yeah.
was she was a single parent mum. She had 4 children,
Wow.
multiple jobs. She sent all of us to private school. I don't know how she
Oh
did
my
it.
God, that's
Yeah,
amazing. She was a superwoman.
she was.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for me, it's like she wanted us to have what she didn't have. So that's what drives me now.
Mm.
It's living her unfulfilled dream. She would take me to all of these business conferences.
Did she?
Yeah, I didn't
Brilliant.
even. Yeah, I didn't fully know what was going on, but it always. I was always a space where there was always opportunities and possibilities of excelling. So,
Yeah.
and she actually trained to be. She was training to be a counselor, but then she didn't
Oh, wow.
move on to the next stage. So, I think, yeah, she has shaped a lot of
Big
my
stilettos
life.
to fill.
Yes, I know. And I will fill them, and it's
You
all
are
about
filling them,
legacy.
Martina.
Oh, thank you. One day at a time. One day at a time. So, how would you say that, resilience, what role would you say it's contributed in terms of the success that you're experiencing in your life professionally and personally? Because resilience and success, they're kind of married together, aren't they?
Yes, yes. I suppose resilience has been about, I suppose, awareness, getting really
Mm-hmm.
good self-awareness, which I'm a
Yes.
big advocate, as I know you are, of
Mm-hmm.
journaling.
Yes.
And I think firstly, we develop resilience through self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I really kind of had to think about my life a lot more when I hit 40. I was in private practice, so I had lost all the security of the NHS and
Mm-hmm.
sick pay and stuff. And I became quite unwell with a underactive thyroid.
Mm-hmm.
And my background's in nursing, so yeah, no, we've talked about hugely driven, independent. I can
Mm-hmm.
do all the long shifts and all
Yeah.
that. I'd worked hard, but I'd never really kind of thought about myself. And
Right.
I became ill with the underactive thyroid. I had quite bad chronic fatigue for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the GP and let them sort it out. And there was so
Mm-hmm.
much they could do. And then they'd given me the tablet and all the advice they could, and it was over to me. And I was in my mindset, you go to a GP, they fix you, and life is rosy, and
Yes.
that's not what happened for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got celiac disease, which has been a bit of a nightmare
All
as well.
right.
And
Oh, sorry to
so
hear that.
a few things came
Mm-hmm.
together. And I think at the point the GP said to me, "Well, that's it. That's all we do," I had to start thinking about taking control, and that's how the CBT Journal came about. Is that
Mm-hmm.
I, instead of kind of leaving my health and over to somebody else, I started thinking, right, I've got to get control now and start
Mm-hmm.
understanding the patterns of our minds and
Yeah.
thinking about how I've trained as a CBT therapist. Our thoughts impact how we feel and what we do, and then
Mm-hmm.
create the worlds that we live in.
Yeah.
I thought, how can I apply this to myself? And I started journaling and really understanding good days, bad days,
Mm-hmm.
everyday journaling, really increasing that self awareness, because so many of us walk around in automatic pilot and we don't have
Yeah.
awareness of mind.
Mm-hmm.
But when you really, and like I'll say to clients in session, how do you talk to yourself? And they have no idea.
Mm,
They have no awareness of mind, not aware of
yeah.
the quality of the environment that you're walking
Mhm.
around with. We're
Yeah.
with our minds all the time. They're very
Yeah.
powerful. They impact everything.
Mhm.
So, and we can't be in therapy every day. We see a
Nope.
therapist maybe once once a week, maybe every
Yeah.
fortnight. But
Mhm.
journaling is a tool that we can use every day, and I know you're a
Mhm.
big advocate of journaling,
Yes, yeah.
and that really helped me start to see the patterns of my
Mhm.
mind. Once I could see what was a good day, what was a bad day, I could then start to implement things. And
Mhm.
I've put together something called Building Resilience Workbook on my.
Mhm.
It's available. You can download it for free on my website.
Yeah.
But from what I found, I kind of put together kind of 6 things that for me really built my resilience up. I
Mhm.
could annoyingly for me, I could really see that if I went to the gym, I felt better, and it stopped. With underactive
Mhm.
thyroid, you gain loads of weight, and like gained a
Mhm.
stone like really quickly.
Right.
And going to the gym, it makes me feel better. And because I was journaling about this, like as much as I wasn't a gym goer. I love
Yeah.
exercise now, I
Mhm.
really do, but I
Mhm.
hated it.
Yeah.
But because I was keeping this diary, I could see that if I exercised, I'd feel so much better.
Mhm.
And you can't ignore that evidence. And in
Mm.
CBT, it's a lot about
Yes.
testing things out.
Yes.
And you need to record it to test
Mhm.
stuff out. It gives you such good evidence.
Yes,
Doing
yeah.
mindfulness, if
Mhm.
you do it consistently on a regular basis,
Yeah.
is really beneficial. But
Mhm.
it's so hard to just reflect back and think how, what was that like? Has that been useful to me? But when
Mhm.
you're journaling about it, it stands out.
Mhm.
So that really, I suppose I had this drive, motivation, very independent, a bit of a
Mhm.
workaholic, and
Yeah.
my body was like, okay, now stop. And I had to
Mm.
tune in and listen to me. And I think over
Mhm.
these last 7 years, and of course, the menopause has come along in those 7 years, which is
Mhm.
even more fun for us women.
Yeah.
That you really, in order to build resilience, it's about taking a very holistic approach.
Mhm. Yes,
I
yeah.
think personally as well, one of the things that's been really useful for me is that I talk to my clients about something called stress anchors,
Mhm.
that we need to have, I say, at least 5 stress anchors in our life, and those are things that you do every single day, and you can maybe not do them for a few weeks, but you need to
Mhm.
know that you're not doing them and bring them online. So
Mhm.
my stress anchors are journaling, regularly seeing my friends, reading non-fiction books,
Mhm.
gratitude, doing yoga,
Mhm.
exercise. I have things that are kind of real anchors in my life. And if I
Mhm.
can't read a fiction book, I know that's because I'm too stressed now. And I
Right.
might not
Mhm.
do it for a few weeks, but it's on my radar that I need to bring it
Mhm.
in. And I think we need to have these kind of resilience anchors or stress
Yeah.
anchors
Mhm.
that, you know, ground us and
Mhm.
constantly building our resilience up.
Yeah.
And
And it's
then,
very personal, isn't it? Because we've all got different values. So for you, it's, the yoga, reading non-fiction, the
yeah,
mindfulness, the gratitude. But for someone else, it might be something different, depending
yeah,
upon, yeah, their characteristics, their values, what gives them purpose,
yeah,
really. So I love that you shared those examples. So for the listeners, think about, what is important to you, and there's some of the areas that we cover in the Rivers to Resilience model. So we ensure that it is a holistic approach, the
yeah,
7 rivers, because we're all different. And it makes me think of one of the rivers, which is looking at social connectedness and spirituality. So some people may not be spiritual. So if you're not, then obviously you don't focus on that river. But for
mm,
other people, that could be very important, and then that will help
yeah,
kind of bolster their resilience and their well-being. So I love that you shared that, and also being active, that links into
mm,
one of the other rivers, which is like the physical health, fitness, and exercise, and it's making it work for you. Because
yeah,
sometimes people think, oh, resilience, like, oh, what does that mean? What do I need to do? But it's about making it work for you, tailoring it
Yeah.
to the individual as
I
well.
think
And
the most important relationship we have is with ourselves, and we look
yeah,
after ourselves, everything else will fall into place. And
yes.
some people don't care for themselves because they think it's self-indulgent,
Hmm.
you know, or they're selfish if they focus on themselves. But if you
Yes.
focus on yourself, you're in a much better position for everybody else around you, and that's your
Yes.
teams, your work colleagues and
Yes.
stuff. So actually, building resilience up within yourself makes you, and especially in therapy, we work with the minds of
Yes.
other people every day,
Hmm.
and minds that are often distressed and upset.
Hmm.
So it's fundamental. Part of my care for my clients is that I look after myself, because when we
Hmm.
when we are not resilient and we're in threat mode, you focus inwards. We're when we're not feeling well, we're not good, or we're stressed,
Hmm.
overwhelmed, burnt out, our attention goes inwards. When we're in a good place, we're not focusing on ourselves because we don't need
Hmm.
to. We're out
Hmm.
there doing our best work.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that makes me think about leaders and managers in
Yeah,
organizations, and the importance of them doing the work on
yeah,
themselves, being self-aware as a leader, because your team is coming to you for
yeah,
support, for guidance, or maybe for, supervision. And if
yeah,
you're not in a good place, you're not self-aware,
no,
then you could be having a negative and adverse effect upon your team members, which is ultimately going to affect performance and productivity. And
yeah,
employees should be going to their managers for support, but we know that a lot of the research shows that if people are struggling, they don't really open up to their
no.
managers. So managers have got to create that environment and safe space for their team to
Absolutely.
be
Yeah.
open.
I don't know if you know the work of Deborah Lee's doing a lot of work in leadership within the NHS and
Hmm.
compassionate leadership. And she starts her workshops by saying it starts with you.
Hmm.
The leaders come into the workshops thinking they're going to learn about their team and about
Hmm.
things outside of them. And
Yeah.
it starts with the leader
Hmm.
focusing on themselves,
Hmm.
and then they're in a resilient place for everybody around them.
Hmm. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
it's a big responsibility being a leader,
Yeah.
isn't it? And being
Yeah.
an effective leader, should I say? Because there's many leaders and they're not necessarily as effective
Yeah.
as they could possibly be. So, what I want us to do now is just to kind of elaborate a little bit more around journaling and self awareness and how that can enhance resilience, because that is the first river to resilience, because it's important for us as individuals, as leaders, even just in your family, in all kind of
Yeah.
domains and spheres of life, for us to be self aware, emotionally aware, because that is the that positions us for success in terms of building resilience. And it makes me, I always share this when I talk about resilience and do training, that we've got to locate ourselves.
Mm.
And when you think about the kind of a sat nav and the GPS, if you're wanting, if there's a certain destination that you're going to, you've got to type in, well, it finds it for you. Google Maps, it locates where you are. But imagine if it was faulty, how
Yeah.
would you be able to arrive at your destination? And that is a really helpful analogy when we think about self awareness and how that can enable us to build resilience. So
Mm.
I love that you've shared about your experience, Sarah, of journaling when you had, health difficulties, and how that allowed you to build your resilience. What else would you share in terms of how journaling can help to enhance resilience? And also, I guess, the thinking about the consistency with journaling, because you can start off really good, and then after a couple of weeks you
Yeah.
can stop. And I'm sharing from my own experience. I'm just being
And
honest.
mine as
Yeah,
well. That's everybody, isn't it?
yeah,
That's all of us. I
yeah.
think journaling, the very act of deciding to journal, you might kind of brush it away and say, "Is this a bit hippy trippy?"
Hmm.
But there's actually a lot of research around it, that it improves clarity. People are more likely to reach their goals if they're journaling. It helps
Hmm.
build resilience. It's
Yeah,
releasing stress.
yeah.
Gives clarity, and there's a whole host of things. A lot of
Yeah.
the work comes from Dr. James Penbaker, who wrote
Mhm.
he wrote a book like, have I got it here? Write Yourself Happy. I won't be able to find it. I've got a whole host of books. But James Penbaker, I'll find the book so you can
Mhm.
link to it, has done
Yeah.
a lot of the research around it. And, on a very fundamental thing, resilience starts with getting the basics right, your hydration, food,
Mhm.
sleep, all those basic
Yeah.
stuff. And being able to sit down and give yourself even 10 minutes of reflection is a basic kind of anchor, isn't it? So you're giving
Mm.
yourself time, you're starting to think about what's going on for me. And the
Mhm.
reason I quite like journal, lots of people, when I talk to them about journaling, they go, well, what am I going to write? And
What are you not gonna write? That's what there's always lots
they
going on.
There is, but it's difficult to access it, and it can feel a bit weird to write it
Mhm.
down, can't it? But
Mhm.
sometimes using the framework of CBT is, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts? How are you feeling? What's going on in your body? And
Mhm.
what's your behaviours? What are you motivated to do? Can
Mhm.
give a framework for
Yeah.
it. On
Mhm.
Instagram, I'm always putting journal prompts, and people use
Mhm.
those as kind of a starting base. But
Mhm.
thinking about, you can start by thinking, what's going on in your mind? What's going on in your body? What are you
Mhm.
motivated to do? And once you start, it will just flow and
Mhm.
lots of stuff will come out. And then, I always find it useful to put a timer on my phone for 10
Okay.
minutes, and I just journal for 10 minutes because I find that pressure works for me. I don't know, I've got a bit of a
Mhm.
competitive nature, and it focuses me in, and I will just write for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And you're starting. I think there's something important about putting pen to paper as well. I
Mhm.
mean, doing it on your notes on your phone is great if that's all you've got. But I think,
Mhm.
and I'm sure James Penbaker talks about the science of actually writing it
Mhm.
down gives you a clarity. It gives you a bit of distance. You
Yes.
start to see the patterns of your mind, and with
Mhm.
awareness of your mind comes choice. When you know what your mind's doing, you then have choice over what you do with it.
Mhm.
And often, especially with leaders, I think that we can, in order to get yourself to a position of leading, often we can be quite critical. And I think,
Mm.
and hard on ourselves, and
Mhm.
we're trying to get to that spot and that place in leadership. And criticism isn't might get you there, but it's not going to keep you there. You're going to get
Mm.
burned out and overwhelmed. So
Yeah.
understanding how you're coaching yourself, and if you would coach yourself as you coach your employees in your workforce, is
Mhm.
hugely important.
Mhm.
And I don't know another way of finding that out other than journaling. Therapy, business coaching is great, and I
Mhm.
see lots of business owners now that are coming to therapy because
Mhm.
they want more of that psychological input to get awareness
Mhm.
of the mind. And definitely my job as a therapist is to reflect people's mind to them, is to really
Mhm.
pick out the patterns of their mind.
Mhm.
But I see huge kind of success with people that come to the therapy session but are journaling in between. You just see their growth is
Mhm.
huge. And it's uncomfortable to do because you're
Mhm.
turning towards difficulty, but in
Yeah.
engaging with difficulty means that you can work with. The
Mhm.
opposite of that is avoiding it, holding it at arm's length, ignoring it, and those
Yeah.
problems get bigger.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and it's I guess when you do that, you're just kind of internalizing all of your emotions, and they will come out sooner rather than
yes, they do. Yeah,
later. So
yeah,
it's kind of weighing up and balancing. Think about the costs and benefits of journaling and not journaling ultimately. And like you said, that there is a science behind journaling, behind being
yeah,
self-aware, and it's focusing on the long-term benefits and being able
yeah,
to tolerate those uncomfortable feelings or
yeah.
emotions. And as with anything, it's a skill. Initially, you might start and you feel a bit rusty, but then I guess
And I
it becomes
love it now. It
automatic.
feels like a dose of self-care. If I've got time
Mhm.
to journal, a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the evening, I feel like I'm in control.
Mhm.
My life's balanced. I'm looking after myself.
Mhm.
It's just part of things going smoothly for me. Another
Mhm.
thing that I'd add is that when we journal, if we're going through a really tough time, I think it's really useful information. But we have something called, where we have a negative cognitive bias to put down
Mhm.
what's not
Yeah.
going right. So in the
Mhm.
journal, I talk about kind of gratitude and how important that is. So I think it's, always nice to finish a piece of journaling with some gratitude, because
Mhm.
then you're toning up the
Mhm.
positive emotions. And
Mhm.
positive emotions, we need to work on them. They're like muscles. We need to
Yes.
train them up. They're brilliant for resilience. But how
Mhm.
often do we think, oh, we kind of focus on being proud of what we've achieved that day and
Mhm.
notice how we feel it in our body?
Mhm.
We don't do that. But
Mhm.
journaling as well gives you a brilliant opportunity
Mhm.
to focus on the positive and build up those positive emotions and feelings.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And also, I guess around the kind of self-awareness and journaling and just kind of linking it back to resilience, having, whether it's a digital app that you're using to journal
Mm.
or an actual physical book or just a piece of paper, whatever it is, having that as a record is
Yeah,
powerful for those tough times. And it helps you to remember how far you've come along in
absolutely.
life's journey, and sometimes we do forget, so journaling is really helpful in kind of boosting our memory and being able to kind of shift that focus towards the positive, as you shared, and challenging that kind of negative bias and just giving you that clarity of thought, because
Yeah,
life is so busy, isn't it? Sometimes your head can be so full that it's
yeah.
difficult. And I love that you shared about the gratitude part of it, because that takes me back to COVID, and I was shielding and I started using a gratitude journal. That's what was kind of keeping me sane.
Oh, I
So,
know. I've bought in Waterstones at the moment. I've got this gorgeous. I've
oh, I
shared
love
it.
that.
It's
Right.
absolutely gorgeous, and then it's got a morning meditation, what today's focus is, an
Hmm.
affirmation for a day, for the day,
Yes.
which I am really enjoying doing. What am I
Hmm.
grateful for, excited about, and then the end of the day, and that's really nice. It's
Hmm.
lovely. It
Oh,
just
no, that's
feels,
great.
yeah.
I am one for. I think we're quite similar, Sarah, with books.
Go
I've
on.
got books. I've got one. I use it as a bit of a journal and kind of look at business stuff. But because I've got it here, I thought let me show you. And
Oh,
I
nice.
had lost this, and I was devastated. And I found it recently, so I just thought I'd just show you
Nice.
mine. Sometimes I just actually like the feel of it.
That's
It's just
yeah.
yeah.
And the thing
I've got
that's part of it, isn't it? Having a lovely book, a lovely
yes,
pen, lighting
yes,
a candle and stuff
definitely.
like that.
It's
Yeah.
all about it's that self-care and
Mm,
reminding ourselves that we are important, and we deserve the best in life, and it doesn't need to be costly,
no, no.
but it's just about knowing what we value as
Yeah,
individuals and setting that time aside to understand what we do, for example, through journaling, and
yeah.
knowing that actually what's not working for us, and if it's not, get rid.
Yes,
But some
absolutely. And I
yeah.
like what you made an important point before about looking back over it and reviewing what you've written, which is I find that really hard to do at times. But
Mhm.
that's where the power was when
Yes.
when I was not well and I mean, if I could have not gone to the gym and just
Yeah.
seeing that eating buns was good for me, I would have been doing that, and I was like, "Oh, no." But
Mhm.
it really helped me be consistent with my
Mhm.
exercise, and now I love it, but
Mhm.
if I would never have got to that had I not
Yeah.
been looking back and having things, and seeing how well you've done at difficult times as well, how
Yes.
tough things can get, and
Mhm.
how resilient you are
Mhm.
is good evidence for you're gonna be resilient in the future.
Yes,
Life can
definitely.
throw whatever it wants. It might not be easy, but you can
Mhm.
work with it.
Yes. And I guess that will motivate you, won't it, to continue using those
Yeah,
strategies if you know that it's actually working. So it's reinforcing that new behavior that's building up your
yeah,
resilience muscles. And we've talked about the gym and exercise, and that's resilience. It's a muscle. You've got to keep working that muscle. And if you
yes,
stop, then it's going to be a little bit weak for want
yeah,
of a better word. So consistency is the key with
mhm,
resilience if you want to be able to find advantage in adversity and to kind of leverage those challenging times. You've got to embrace
yeah,
adversity, embrace challenges because it is part of life. And you'd
Yeah.
mentioned earlier about avoiding situations or challenges, and that is going to setting yourself up for a setback
Yeah.
ultimately. And do we want to create a life full of setbacks, or do we want to create a life full of opportunities? That we have the choice to do that. And with resilience, it's about being intentional. It
Mm.
doesn't just happen. We're not just, we don't just wake up one day and we're resilient. And that's not the case. And I love what you shared about reflecting on the journal, seeing that actually eating all these cakes and buns were not helping you, but
Yeah.
going to the gym wasn't. And that's the kind of I'm still on my health journey, but in terms of the exercise, that's what helped. That's what keeps me going. It makes me think of this week. I had such a busy day, but I'm committed to going minimum of 3 times a week. I was exhausted, I was tired, but
Mm.
I just dragged my body to the gym because I knew what was good for me and what was going to build my physical
Yeah.
resilience, so I could build my kind of mental resilience. And then by the end of the gym, I felt energized, and I go to the gym quite late. It was about like 10 o'clock at
Oh my
night.
God. Yeah.
I'm a night owl, but I was like, yes. And I totally forgot about feeling exhausted beforehand. I got my protein bar from the cafe in the gym just to give me a bit of energy, and it wasn't
Yeah.
even nice. But sometimes you just do what
Yeah.
you've got to do. That's resilience, and that's self leadership. That's effectively leading ourselves. And when we
Yeah.
think about leadership, you've got to lead yourself first before you're going to lead anyone else.
Yeah, and
Are
that
we
health
leading
journey
ourselves?
is just it's just a lifestyle, isn't it? It
It
never
is.
ends,
It
and that's
is.
your psychological resilience as well. It's not something you can do for a while and think, "I'm gonna do 8 weeks of mindfulness." It's a
No.
li it has to be a lifestyle,
Yes.
doesn't it?
It does. It does. And you've just
Yeah,
got to check in with yourself regularly to
yeah,
see how you're getting on. Definitely. But what I want us to kind of move along a little and just think about the rivers to resilience model and the 7 rivers, and we've kind of touched upon a few of them already. But I would just love to kind of hear for yourself, what would you say has been most instrumental in building your resilience? And I'll just kind of recap the 7 rivers to resilience. So the first one is looking at self-awareness, emotional awareness, and regulation. The second one is looking at kind of cognitive training, mindset training. So that kind of links with mindfulness, or kind of coping with some of the unhelpful thoughts and reframing them. Then the stress management, so maybe relaxation, yoga, focusing on physical health, fitness, and exercise, social connectedness, spirituality, and then growth mindset and self affirmation. So, which of those would you say has been most instrumental, or has it been a combination of all of those?
it's been absolutely all of them,
Yeah.
absolutely all of them. I think the first is like the first is I love that you've got that first because I think that is the first pillar
Yes.
of resilience, isn't
Hmm.
it? You
Yes.
know, awareness through journaling, mindfulness develops kind of self-awareness. With that
Hmm.
awareness, then you can start looking at kind of what thoughts best serve me, getting more
Hmm.
cognitive flexibility,
Hmm.
working with your thoughts, your feelings, emotions, and kind of
Hmm.
thinking about your behavior. And then I think, I was another thing I was very avoidant of was yoga. I was like, oh my God, I haven't got time in my life for that rubbish.
Right,
I was
that's
really,
interesting because you seem so committed to it. I see your post on
I
on
know, and
Instagram.
I'm
Yeah,
going to get one of my yoga teachers to come on my
wow,
podcast because I
fantastic.
suppose I was lucky that a yoga studio opened up, Yoga Life, down the road from me,
Hmm.
and um, and I remember going to this class and thinking the woman would be a bit like there'd be joss sticks everywhere and loads of tie
Yeah,
dye, and it's like not me at all. And I remember
yeah.
I sat at the front of the yoga studio
Oh,
because I was
that's
like,
brave of you.
well, because I was like, "Well, I need to know because I've not been to yoga, I don't know what this is about, so I need to sit at
Hmm.
the front." I now know that everybody who knows what they're doing sits at the front, don't they? The ones that have got all the outfits on, and
Ah.
everybody who doesn't sits at the back, but I was like, "No, it's part of it. I need to see her every move," and it was like
Yes.
this power yoga, I was like and it really trendy music, and
Okay.
I just absolutely fell in love with it because yoga
Hmm.
has changed, but I think it because I had a bit of chronic fatigue, weights and cardio weren't that good. It was more about, so I had
All
to
right.
build up strength,
Mhm.
and I think that has built up my spirituality as well, the
Mhm.
kind of connecting the mind with the breath and the body,
Mhm.
because my supervisor, Mary Welford, talks a lot about this, that in order to kind of have a calm mind, you need a calm body. You have to
Yes.
calm the body down. You have to learn to calm the body down.
Mhm.
So a lot of what we do in CBT is changing the thoughts. But if you're in a really anxious physiology, you can't change your thinking.
Mm.
You have to
Yes.
work with the body.
Mhm.
So that was really good for me, and it got me. I went actually booked on a yoga retreat very quickly after that first class and did it for a week.
Right. Oh, that's
And
impressive,
just
that.
was up at 5 in the morning chanting and doing yoga, like,
Mhm.
all day for 5 days, and I
Mhm.
was so strong by the end of it. It was,
Oh,
like,
that's
brilliant.
amazing.
So it gives me a real kind of strength, but it's also helped me how to slow down, because I think I've always I would have struggled with just mindfulness, so now I
Mm.
love mindfulness, but,
Mhm.
I think it was a great route into that.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Right.
what
Fantastic. So, I guess essentially what you've shared is that in terms of your building your personal resilience, it's kind of a combination of all of the kind of rivers to
yeah,
resilience, but the kind of the initial pillar is that self-awareness and journaling,
yeah.
locating yourself and knowing what is going on with yourself,
And
and
I
then
think
you
you've
can
got to
take
get the
action.
basics right. You
Yes.
can't ignore the basics.
Yes.
Like, sleep is fundamental to it's the foundation
Yeah.
of mental health, isn't it? And
Mhm.
how many leaders or people in the workplace don't focus, it's kind of
Mhm.
you get a medal if you've only had about 3 hours sleep, and this
Yeah.
is really, really scary, because your brain just won't function well. So
Mhm.
sleep, diet,
Mhm.
hydration, all those basics in place, which I think you've got kind of under, the
The
second is
physical the
yeah,
physical health and the fitness and
yeah,
exercise. Yes, yes.
yeah. So, yeah, I think that's hugely important
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah, and I think we can't overlook the connection between the mind and the body, and that's why
Yeah,
we've got to take a holistic approach. It's not one or the other. It's a combination um,
yeah.
of the two. And I guess, like you were saying, for leaders, if you're overlooking your sleep, it is gonna it's gonna bite you eventually, and it will affect your performance and productivity, and it affects your cognitive abilities, your decision
Well, having
making.
less than 7 hours sleep is equivalent to getting up and having a couple of units of alcohol and
Right.
getting on with
Oh
your
gosh.
day. So
Oh,
it's huge. It's
right.
absolutely literally, we shouldn't be driving if we've had less than 7 hours sleep,
Right. I tend to have about 6. I don't know why. I feel like I've
Mm.
needed less earlier on, later on in life. Around 6, I'm.
Well, have a look at the work of Matthew Walker. He's done
Mhm,
some really good podcasts.
mhm.
I think he's been on Rangan Chatterjee's podcast and
Ah,
Joe
right.
Rogan's, but he's done a book, Why We Sleep, which is actually quite scary. It will make you really
Right.
prioritize
I think
sleep.
my client was actually talking about this with
Yeah.
me, yeah, in a couple of weeks back.
He's
7
soft
hours.
he's softened his message a little bit
Right.
after the
Yeah.
first work he did. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
sleep has to be absolutely prioritized.
Yeah, I'm getting better. I think what what I tend to do is I focus on the fact that, okay, I don't need to stay up and do this work now. Go to sleep now, and you can just do it the next day. But I think it's the challenge of being a business owner, entrepreneur. There's always something to do, and I guess it kind of fits
Yeah.
with the journaling. I just need to, and I am doing it. You just got to stop. But sometimes when you don't give yourself that time to reflect, sometimes we do things that are not actually helping us in the
Yes.
long term. So
Yeah.
we've got to
Well,
reflect, haven't we?
there's a book out recently that lots of entrepreneurs and business leaders are reading around short. It's called Shorter, and it's
Hmm.
about doing a 4-day work week and how that
That sounds
actually,
great.
yeah, kind of, if you reduce the hours with which you work, you increase productivity,
Hmm.
you know. So
That is the goal. It's what is it? Sweden. There's a country that's introduced is it Sweden? It's somewhere in Scandinavia. They've introduced a four
Yeah,
day four
yeah.
day working week. Because yeah, like you said, you could be in work 5 days or more, but actually, are you being
They say
productive?
after about 8 hours of a working day that your productivity doesn't increase really, and I
Hmm.
know in France, they are very firm around their 9 to 5 working
Mm,
hours, and people work a lot in a lot more focused way and take their breaks and
right.
stuff, and
Hmm.
productivity doesn't really shift, so,
Hmm. Yeah.
it's
So we
interesting.
need to look at applying that in the
Well, I
UK.
think I know we both love what we do, don't we? And so many
Yeah,
people do. So it's
it
easy
is.
to just keep
It
going,
doesn't
going,
feel
going.
like work. I mean,
No,
I'm just going to be honest. Look at us. It's Saturday.
I know. Stop it. Listen
We're
to
so
us
we're so
shouting
committed though. But like you said, it doesn't feel
No,
like
I've
work.
been dead excited, looking
Yes.
forward to this.
So is there anything else you want to share about resilience, self-awareness and journaling before we move on to some other areas?
No, I think we've given it, I'm sure I'll think about some stuff later, but I think
Yeah.
that's quite comprehensive. Yeah,
Hmm.
there's loads of
Okay.
blogs. If anybody wants, I've got like the benefits of journaling, how to start a journal, therapy journals, gratitude journals.
Hmm.
I've written loads of blogs on my website, so people
Yeah.
can check that stuff
Yeah.
out.
Fantastic. And I'll add the links to the
Um,
podcasts when it's available. So if you could have a conversation with your younger self, Sarah, what would you say?
Oh, I love this question.
I actually, if I'm being, I got this off you. I
Yeah.
introduced it after being on your podcast.
Fantastic, and isn't it a brilliant question?
It
I
is.
love asking it people.
Yes.
So, I think I would say to my younger self, "You're about to go on an amazing journey,
Hmm.
and embrace that."
Hmm.
Gosh, what else would I say to my I did write some notes, let me
Hmm.
see. Yeah, I think you're gonna go on an amazing journey, believe in yourself,
Hmm.
believe in what you think's right. I
Hmm.
would definitely say do your bloody homework. I
Yes,
would
that's a good one. I like that.
'cause I've done a lot of my studying later on, and I really think that I mean, God, I never would have got to this. My younger self never would have got to this, but I think the things that we do every single day make our future. It's
Yes.
the little habits every single
Yes.
day that create an amazing future, and don't
Hmm.
ignore the little stuff. I know there's
Hmm.
this kind of story around if you are flying a plane and you're going to go to New York, if you change the steering wheel by like 3 degrees, you end up in Canada. So just the
Right.
little change
Hmm.
in navigation, you can end up in such a different place.
Hmm.
So focus on the little things every
Hmm.
day, and
Hmm.
that's what I'd say.
Yeah, no,
And,
that's fantastic, and it's about that incremental change, isn't it? Just one day at a time, and sometimes we can just be so focused on the bigger picture, the bigger goal, and that can sometimes be quite disheartening because it
yeah.
feels unattainable. So I love that you
Focus on the
shared that.
simple stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will link that back to resilience. It's the same thing. It's the things, the small things that you do every day, making those right choices that are going
Mhm.
to enhance your resilience, learning to say no about what's not going
Yes.
to serve, say no to those buns. And say yes to, like, even if it's a 5 or 10 minute walk, you know, in the middle of the day. All of that is going to help to kind of build and bolster your resilience.
Yes.
But it's been fantastic having you as a guest today, Sarah.
Oh, thank
Everyone,
you.
connect with her. She's got a fantastic podcast, fantastic blogs that she shares. She's also an author. Do you want to share a little bit? Actually, we didn't.
I did, well, in lockdown, while everybody else was baking banana cake, I showed you before, didn't I? I wrote just a chapter in this book, digital delivery of mental health therapies. I did the CBT chapter, but I think, as therapists, we all had to go online and learn a lot very
Mhm.
quickly about how to deliver our different therapies
Mhm.
online. And I think the good news is that the research shows it's just as effective as face to face. So,
Yeah.
which makes it brilliant, a lot more accessible for people, that
Mhm.
travel and students and people that just can't access the therapy room.
Mhm.
You now can, and as therapists we can learn how to really improve our online presence and our online delivery of therapy. So
Yeah.
that came out in February of this year and is available on all good bookstores and Amazon.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So if that's something that interests you, or if you're a therapist listening, go and check it out. But it's been fantastic having you on today's podcast. And until next month, we will connect with you all then.
Lovely. Thank you so much,
You're
Martina.
welcome.
Thank you for listening to Ask a Therapist. For more information about the CBT Journal, visit my website at sarahrees.co.uk. You can also sign up to download your free guide to building emotional resilience, delivered straight to your inbox. You will then also receive regular newsletters where I share my blog posts, podcasts, and tips and strategies for better mental health and psychological resilience. Don't forget to review and subscribe to the podcast, and you can also share episodes on social media using the hashtag AskTheTherapist. This episode was written and presented by me, Sarah Rees, and edited by Big Tent Media and produced by Emily Crosby Media.